All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Derek Kirby, joined again by Big Game James. Tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit of Cowboys, some interesting developments today. Very busy day in the NFL as a whole. James, how you doing?
I'm doing great, big dog. How you doing? It's always good to hear your voice, man. You got a soothing
Thank you,
voice.
thank you. Yeah, man, I'm doing well. Just trying to keep up with all the updates and everything coming out today. It sounds like Jerry, for instance, has his pocketbook a little bit lighter now, and also some roster
Mm-hmm.
moves, not just on the Cowboys, but also around the league. So let's
Man,
start off. Let's start off
yeah.
with the Jerry Jones thing. So we had heard throughout the week that Jerry was going to be fined quote unquote millions by the NFL. And today we finally saw what that amount was going to be. We knew he was going to appeal it. It sounds like that didn't go through. What do you know on the subject of it? What was the latest?
Well, the latest is from what I'm hearing and seeing that he paid. It was $2 million that he owed. He paid that money, and it's kind of like, in my heart and eyes, I think he did the right thing. Uh, we don't, in my heart, Cowboys fans, we already had enough with this Ezekiel Elliott thing, and I get it with the battle that he has with Goodell. I mean, I guess if I was an owner and had that money and somebody was trying to do me like that, I wouldn't just want to lay down either. I'm looking at it from the owner's perspective, so I probably wouldn't want to just lay down and give in to no commissioner either. But at the same time, for the benefit of the team and the drama that comes with it, I'm glad that even though I wouldn't want him to see Jerry pay that money, but it's good he got fat pockets. Him pay that $2 million, get it out the way. Now nobody's talking about it. There's no more controversy about it, and we move on. Because if he would have fought it, it'd have kept dragging it out, and then it distracts from what the Dallas Cowboys are trying to do. We're heading into free agency. We're heading into the draft. We don't read Dallas Cowboys don't need this
Oh,
kind of drama.
I agree completely. I just wanted the whole saga to end, right? Like this stemmed from the Ezekiel
Mm-hmm.
Elliott court cases. It stemmed from, whether the NFL will say it or not. It stemmed from Jerry kind of challenging Goodell a little bit in terms of his new contract extension. So I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it kind of put to rest and to allow us just to move on, because if there's one thing we don't want to see, it's another drawn out thing where there's all kinds of conspiracy theories like, oh, they're never calling holding against opposing offensive
Mm-hmm.
line, so like Demarcus Lawrence is held every play, it never ends. So I'm glad just to put it behind us, just whatever, fresh. This last year was just rife with these kind of issues. I just want to put it to bed and move on. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was once I heard it that I got a little. I'm not gonna say nervous, but I got a little like my spider senses started tingling when I heard, he was gonna have the hearing and he wanted to have a hearing. So that's when I was like, oh man, here we go again. This is gonna be another fight. This is gonna be another 2, 3, 4 weeks, months. Now it's gonna bleed into the draft, and it's just like that's not what we need to be talking
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
is these picks and trades and players. That's what we need to worry about, and we're going to jump into that because I got a lot of frustration right now because man, we'll jump into
Yeah.
that.
So, speaking of Demarcus Lawrence, I was just talking about how he's had so many issues where, he didn't get holding calls and all of that last year, but he still put forth a career year. That's been one of the kind of hotly debated things with Cowboy fans about how Dallas was going to and how they needed to handle him. And it looks like Dallas has gone ahead and franchised him, and the latest on that is Demarcus Lawrence has signed his franchise tag, his franchise tender, for 17.22 million, I believe, which leaves Dallas with, at least as it stands now, before they have to, that lovely word we hate, restructure some contracts. It leaves them with virtually no money as it stands right now. So, what do you think on Dallas franchising Lawrence as opposed to signing him long term, or do you think it's like Dez, where we initially franchised and then worked out a deal in that same offseason?
I don't think it's like Dez at all because I feel like Dez had put up the numbers really to get the contract. So I can understand why Dez was like, no, I don't really want to get the franchise tag. I can see it from the player's point because if you look at the years that he had in the year, he was his numbers were speaking for themselves to get the big contract. It was just a matter of how much you're going to sign him for. But I feel like Dez, uh, uh, came in, he proved himself, and he deserved to get that money. Now with Demarcus Lawrence, a lot more injuries, suspension. So now I think it's a different situation with Demarcus Lawrence, and I think that he'll play on that tag this year because he hasn't put up the stats whereas a Dez Bryant did. He's only had 9 sacks in 3 years with the Dallas Cowboys, and then had a career year in his contract year. We've seen that many a times in NFL where players get into their contract year and they ball out, knowing this saying that they're trying to get that second contract because you never, well, I'm not going to say never, but it's very hard in the NFL to get three
Yeah.
contracts. You're usually going to get two, and then you're pretty much done. Unless you're like one of the creme elite players, you may get that third contract, but two contracts is pretty much it. So, these guys got to get it. So I don't have any problem with the tag because it has to happen. The players signed for it in the NFL, so this has to happen. This what has to go. This what goes on. Let him prove it another year, and I think he will. As long as Demarcus Lawrence stay healthy, I think he'll have another good year for the Dallas
Yeah,
Cowboys.
I agree. One thing kind of interesting that I think it was Cowboy Jobu, I saw kind of talk about it a little bit. He talked about kind of how, Kirk Cousins, with how the Redskins handled him, it kind of changed the way business was done in the NFL with regard to, hitting him with multiple franchise tags and all of that. And, you saw how his year to year cap kept going up and up and up. And now, presumably Demarcus Lawrence could benefit from that same thing. What I don't like doing is kind of moving the goalpost on a guy. Like, it was one thing, going into last year, everyone said, well, no, you don't give him an extension now. You want to see what he's got. You want to see him prove it. And then he goes out there, he's second in the league in 14 and a half sacks, makes the Pro Bowl. And you're like, oh, well, it was a contract year. They moved the goalpost. It was a contract year. Of course he's going to play. Let's see him do it again. So now they want to see him do it again. Well, he's been franchised. We know he'll have at least one more year here. If he does it again, then you can't move it again and go, well, he was again in a contract year or something like that. If he does it again, you pay him. Like that's what it is. Assuming he's healthy, obviously, by the end of the year and hasn't suffered some kind of a catastrophic injury or something like that, or a third back surgery. I think at that point, then I have serious doubt as well. But yeah, that's just what I hate. I hate when people constantly move the goalpost, and it makes it just unfair to the player.
Yeah, it does. But you know what? I think the biggest difference between Demarcus Lawrence and the Kirk Cousins situation, I feel like Kirk Cousins wanted to be with the Redskins. The Redskins really didn't want Kirk Cousins, and if they did, they would have already signed him. You've seen Jimmy Garoppolo goes right over to the Niners and signs a huge deal. If a team wants you, they're going to sign you. They didn't really want to sign him. I don't feel like long term, and they didn't really believe in him. They wanted to rent him year by year to see if he could take them somewhere. And when he couldn't take them somewhere or they didn't go over the hump, they're like, well, there's no reason for us to keep him. So they basically were renting him and he was renting them. So that was a rental situation. I don't think it's a rental situation with Demarcus Lawrence because just like you were saying, if he comes back with another good year and he's injury free, you need to go ahead and sign him long term because it's not a rental. He wants to stay in Dallas. You want him to stay in Dallas. He's trying to prove that I'm trying to be here for the long term. He's still young. You go ahead and do it. This isn't a rental situation where it was with Kirk Cousins because you see, as you see, now he's
Yeah,
gone.
absolutely. Um, so speaking of guys who were gone, we saw that Dallas made some roster moves today. Now the name brand one, I guess you would say, Benson Mayowa, defensive end. We got him from Oakland via, I think it was free agency. I don't think he was a trade, but he was an okay bit part, but you saw him at times kind of fall into the doghouse where he couldn't get on the field. And when you have a situation like that, even if he shows flashes from times, what you really need is consistency out of a player, and that's something that even guys like David Irving sometimes struggle with. Less so last year, but in his career as a whole, I'd say that's something he's also struggled with. And you just got to be reliable. And with Mayowa, I don't know if it was an effort thing or if it was kind of a mental preparation thing, but it's one of those things all the same that led to Dallas ultimately moving on. Do you think that kind of signals any thinking for like the draft or free agency, like to fill that role?
Well, honestly, I don't know what their thinking is because my thinking is you need to go out there and get Earl Thomas when they're already talking about releasing Richard Sherman and they're talking about they can dangle Earl Thomas. They're looking for draft picks. I see what they're doing. So if you look at the Benson Mayowa situation, I don't understand why they really signed him from the beginning. They
Hmm.
signed him for 2 years. When you look at why you sign players, if you're bringing that player in for 2 years, you need to have that player be productive in those 2 years to see either he's going to get a contract or you will move on. But you have to put him in the position to be productive. His first year he comes in with Dallas, he obviously got benched for a while with Marinelli for effort. He came on, had a few good sack games, but nobody ever was talking about some Benson Mayowa. Nobody's ever been scared of Benson Mayowa. Nobody's ever. He's not going to go to another team and ever dominate. He is a fringe player, a backup player, and when Stephen Jones says we're not going to overpay for players that are just regular players, but you're also doing bargain spending and you're getting what you pay for. So for 2 years you had him. Basically, what did he do in those 2 years you signed him? Nothing. So to me, that was a waste of 2 years of getting a player like that. If you're going to go out and sign a player, you only think you're going to get him a couple of years, just like with the Alfred Moore situation. You need to get productivity out of this player. And then when you do get productivity out of this player, you need to think about reassigning him. You didn't do that with Terrell McClain. He was hurt a couple of years. He had a really good year. He came on and he showed whenever he was healthy, he could do it. Then he has a good year and you let him go. I don't understand the thinking of that because you have big time players where you can move people back and forth. And you see with Seattle what they're doing with their situation. They're like, okay, we are older now. They got rid of Michael Bennett. He's with the Eagles. They're talking about getting rid of Richard Sherman. They're all saying that we used you up for those 5 or 6 years. Now you're about 30, 32 years old. So now we need to get draft picks and get younger again. Well, Dallas, this is an opportune time to get one of these type players because we still have a young team. So it's okay for us to jump out there and do it. So Stephen Jones, stop being funny because I really like you. I want you to step up and do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dallas has kind of had a sordid history with recently with kind of how they handle free agency, and if they do go get a guy, it is more a middle tier guy, and that does kind of raise some concern or questions, at least for me, with regard to will they actually go out and get a Richard Sherman, assuming he comes free, or even more so, will they make a deal for Earl Thomas, even though it sounds like the price for Earl Thomas is just a mid round pick. We're talking what, a fourth, a fifth? I mean, it
They're saying second or
okay,
third.
yeah,
I'll gladly would give a second or
yeah,
third. You feel me? Like that's not killing the Cowboys. You got 10 picks, and these other teams are doing it. And I'm not saying wreck your picks, but I understand the priority of draft picks. I understand it. But draft picks are really premium when you have an old team. When you have an older team, you really need those draft picks because you need to replenish and get your team young again. But if you have a mid-level team as far as age, Dallas, I think their average age is around 26 years old. They're not an old team by any means. So you're okay to be able to let a draft pick go. Like I said, I don't know what's going on in Stephen Jones' head. I don't know if he's trying to be this strong, tough guy. That's why I put out there like what's going on. Is Jerry doing it? Is Steven doing it? Is Willie McClay doing it? Because I need to find out who's going to make this decision to walk in there and say, damn it, you got Earl Thomas right here. He's from Dallas. He said he wants to come here. They're only just dangling a little bit of draft picks. We can survive and make this happen, and let's do it while we can. That says we're not fooling around. We're trying to get to the Super Bowl. And if we slide by and don't make any moves and sit there and say we're okay, then I'm going to get frustrated, and then I'm going to think, well, what are you really about, Stephen Jones? I'm going to start
yeah,
questioning you.
absolutely. And in recent drafts, the Cowboys have taken a big swing on their second round pick. Right, you saw your Sean Lee's there.
Mm-hmm.
If he stays healthy, that's he's obviously a great risk to have taken. But then you have a lot that haven't quite worked out. Bruce Carter, they tried the same thing. A guy coming off, like in his case, an injury. Same thing.
We love injured
Yeah.
players.
Yeah, Jalen Smith was another one of those. A guy who was phenomenally talented. Had he not got hurt, probably would have been a generational talent at linebacker. And he still might be a productive player for them. It's too early. 1 year in for his active playing career. Jury's out. But all the same, if you're Dallas, how about you take a chance on that second round pick in a different way this year? If that's the cost to get Earl Thomas, why not do it? Yeah,
Trade it.
exactly, exactly. If you're
Do it.
looking at something knowing, if you keep talking about being aware of this window, and they seem to be,
Right.
then that's what you do. If you know Earl Thomas has 2 good years in him, then you trade for him because what's he have on his deal this year and next? There you
Right.
go.
And here's the thing. Like you said, you don't see a player. I've not really ever seen that where you have a player walk up to another coach, and I'm saying Jason Garrett ain't even a
Mm-hmm.
great coach. Keep all the way funky. He ain't even a great coach, and Earl Thomas is going over to
Yeah.
Jason Garrett and saying, "Come get me." And Jason Garrett to me is an average coach. So if he's coming over to Jason Garrett and saying, "Come get me," I mean, that's real serious. It's not like he was like a Bill Belichick or one of these upper echelon type coaches he's running over to. He's running over to a regular coach and saying, "Come get me. If I'm available, come get me." And now Seattle is putting out and saying he's available. He's a Texas boy. He went to the University of Texas. And you just said he's get him for a couple, maybe two, sign him for a 2-3 year deal. It's okay. He's what, 28? So you can get those until he's about 30, 31. He's starting to get some injuries on him. So you got to get squeeze out of him what you can these next 2 years. And I think these will be his last two, maybe
Mm-hmm.
prime years. So get it now while you can. Let him take over the defense because it will be from good to great. And you already got a man who you already brought from the
Yep.
organization who
Yep.
already knows him. It only sounds right. And if you don't do it because you're being too proud, that's a shame on you, Stephen Jones, and the whole
Yeah, I
organization.
think it's going to be interesting to see. I think this could be a moment where we really see what kind of influence, Chris Richard has. We all kind of think that they're grooming him to eventually take over the defensive coordinator position from Rod Marinelli, whether it's after next year or whatever. It seems pretty clear Rod's thinking about retirement at this point, and I think he would be a perfect immediate step in defensive coordinator. And like you said, who knows Earl Thomas better? As if there was any other reasons why Earl Thomas would have interest in coming to Dallas. There you go. And for the Richard Sherman thing, if he's going to be cut, then he's on the market. And yeah, we're pretty well stacked, I think, for the most part at cornerback. And who knows what the price would be for a guy like Sherman at this point. But yeah,
But at least
and
listen,
that's another thing too. Like it's like the architect of the Legion of Boom right there in Dallas, so he can come somewhere he's reportedly in the past said he wanted to be traded to. We were hearing that before last season,
right?
and I can't imagine Dallas doing both, but good God, at least do one of them. I'd rather have Thomas if you give me one. Yep.
I'd rather have Thomas because I don't think Sherman's going to have the impact. I feel like last year when we were headed into the draft and we had the uncertainty with the cornerbacks because we released Claiborne and Brandon Carr and Barry
Wilcox. Yep.
Church and J.J. Wilcox. So there was the uncertainty because you lost four pretty much starters on the defense. So, Wilcox was a starter and, Claiborne was a starter due to, he
Mm-hmm.
was out due to injury. So the jury was out. We didn't have anybody. So when we drafted a bunch of rookies, the Richard Sherman thing made sense in the sense that we needed somebody who was a dog. I keep telling you, we need dogs back there to really get that secondary wrapped up. We didn't. We did a good draft as far as getting good picks. Now you got a Wuze. Now you got Jordan Lewis. You got what's the other one in the back on the back end safety?
Xavier
Uh,
Woods.
Xavier Woods. So and even you got Marquez White
Yep.
still on the practice squad. So still have talent there. Now it's really young. If you get that leader, it's been shown time again. Usually it's in that secondary. You get that really dog in that secondary as far as the control guy. Everybody kind of listens to him. The secondary forms to one beautiful thing. And then you just see how great it becomes. It's a beautiful thing how you see it form. And when you see the magic of it, you got to get it. When you see it from far away and say, this could be magical and we could really make this happen, don't let your scaredness or because you picked up Nolan Carroll. You should have knew for damn well when you picked up Nolan Carroll, he
Yeah.
wasn't good. So that's kind of your fault for going out there. When you got Brandon Carr, he was okay. He wasn't dominant. So that's kind of your fault. It's not the fault of the player. It's kind of you overpaid. So be smarter. When you see a Earl Thomas who's been
Mm-hmm.
proven all pro bowls every year, that's when you say we get a guy like that and make a move and throw some money at him, not a Brandon Carr who came from Grand
Yeah.
Valley State.
Yeah, Earl Thomas is definitely a different animal. I mean, we have safeties on the roster, but we don't have guys that can cover really. That
We don't got
well,
a
yeah,
dog
that
like
that
him.
too. So that's the big thing there. Yeah, if I can have one, I'm taking Earl Thomas. In a perfect world, you find a way to get both maybe at a reasonable price in terms of Sherman, but who knows on that. Speaking of guys, dogs with a little bit of bite to them, what did you make of the recent Des Bryant blow up on Instagram/Twitter? I think he posted it on Instagram and then blew up on Twitter afterwards.
I think it's funny because remember how Dez said he didn't
Yeah,
care what nobody thought?
yeah,
That's why I don't listen to Dez Bryant anymore. You know what I'm saying? I don't listen to what Dez says, and I'm not. And let me make sure if anybody hears this, they're gonna want to get mad and call me a Dez hater. It's not a Dez hater. It's reality. Dez just came on the air and said he don't give a hell, and you can kiss his ass if you ain't believing in
yep,
Dez Bryant, right? Then he makes a post on social media and then comes right back and said, forget all y'all, blah blah. I thought you didn't care, Dez. Yes, you do. You read every post probably. When you post on Instagram, you probably read everything that everybody says. And it bothers you. It's always been a mental thing with Dez Bryant. That's why he's never been a captain with the Dallas Cowboys. Because from the afar, the management and the higher up see that you're not a leader of the team. A leader of the team can't be blowing up all the time on social media because somebody said something that hurt your feelings.
yeah.